Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I am good. I am prepared, and we will see how long that lasts.
I'm loosely prepared. I have
Oop.
written a list of books to talk about. I have not revisited said books though. So,
I have some notes that will be interesting to read out of context because they
oh,
were taken from like my notes of reviews and stuff out of context. So yeah, I won't say the first one, but I'm an odd soul.
I
So I
had
don't
yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I don't really have a book for this. I know you do. So I'll let you go there, and then I'll say what I'm gonna say.
You mean a bonkers book?
Yes.
Oh no, I don't have a bonkers book.
Oh,
I was just
you have a
going to
bunker
tell it.
story.
No, it's not even bonkers. It's just like it makes sense. It makes sense for anyone who has ever spoken to me on any level, which is so I intended to I don't work today when we are recording. I
Mhm.
had no work. So no work, no jobs were done. So I was like I'll run my errands cuz it's a Friday.
Yeah.
I prefer to run errands on Fridays cuz not as many people, right? But uh I love to sleep. So I did not leave in
Same.
the afternoon. So I was like
Me every weekend.
just run this errand really quick. Well, this errand, it was several errands, and the errands were all, except for one, book shopping.
Well,
So,
I want those errands.
errands. I just was like, what if I went to Half Price Books today? That would be fun. Um, so I fully intended to come back a few hours before we planned to record and like actually write notes and prepare. And then instead, I went to 2 different Half Price Books. I was so proud of myself because never before has this happened, but I sold books and the
I
amount
saw
of
that
money.
tweet.
Well, I sell books usually when I go because I have a lot
Yeah.
of books that I'm getting rid of, but I always, like the amount that they give me covers, like, half of whatever I'm buying, which
Mhm.
is great, but this time, for the first time ever, it covered my whole purchase, and I was like, "Wow, no money was spent today, look at me," and then I went to another Half Price Books, and I spent twice the amount of, like, the cost of the first one. Because quite literally, it's like a giant tote bag and a cardboard box full of mass markets.
Oh my god.
Some are very I mean, they're all very exciting.
I feel
Lots
like I
of
need to
step
go shopping.
backs. Some old, like, I got one from like 1979. It was like, I think an Avon,
Ooh.
something first edition. There is one, I was so excited. I wasn't gonna buy it. It had a good step back, but I was like, not really
Mhm.
sure. It was like a Christmassy looking one. And then I saw a little thing on the front and it said something about like bonus ornament included.
I
And I
have that
was like,
one.
do you? It's the
Yes,
Santa.
yes.
I
It's
was
Sexy
so
Santa.
excited.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I bet somebody like took it out, right? Because
No.
why would you? No, it was in there. I like threw it in my bag. It was the Half Price I used to work at. So my coworker Vince was there, who, by the way, is planning on listening to this podcast. I
Hello,
told him all
Vince.
about the bear pit, the bear pit sex scene
Thank
in
God.
Kate Bateman, because I think there were like 3 Bow Street Runner, like they had 3 books, and I was like, oh my god,
As they
Kate
should. They should
Bateman,
have all of them, just
I'm gonna
saying.
buy them. And he
Mhm.
was like making fun of me as he does because I was literally just like pulling books off of the shelves and throwing them into my tote bag. It was an absurd amount of books. And I was like, oh my god, Kate
Me.
Bateman, you don't understand. We talk about this book. We brought it up in like every podcast episode. And then I explained the whole scene where they like get
Yeah,
chased
as
by
you
a
have
bear and then
to.
have sex right next to the pit where they trap the bear. And he was so confused.
You know, I I love whipping that one out because nowhere does anyone expect that story to go where it goes.
No.
Like, you say bear, and they're gonna assume like a gruesome mauling attack or like someone wrestling, like something that's not what actually happens. And then you throw in the element where she's dressed like him.
I didn't even explain that part because
Yeah.
it was already I was, like, in the middle of a store, people were walking around, and I was like and then they have sex on the ground outside, and he's like, outside?" And I'm like, "Yeah, well, the house was right there, but they couldn't get to the house. They
And
couldn't do
then
it. They had to have sex right now."
and then they sneak in the window and her brother's there and she has a handprint on his crotch. So then her brother is like, "I know what you've been doing." And then on that note, I'm not going to talk too much about it because it's not released yet, but I'm currently reading the next book in that series.
Mhm.
And I was aflame in the Panda Express drive-thru, okay? I was aflame because they took 20 minutes to make my mother's like chicken and mushroom thing. So I was just sitting in that car. I could not let a minute go by where I wasn't reading a book. So I flipped it open, as one does on their phone, so I'm not actually flipping anything. And the first scene, they were going crazy. Like, I mean, this book is, like, absolutely everything up my alley, like you were saying in, like, a previous episode, that I love, like, softer books. I mean, this man, they both know that they love each other at the beginning of this book. Like, they're like, trying not to, but they do. And so all it is him just trying to convince her to marry him. And, like, that's all I want. Because you think there's going to be some big drama from the summary. No. So, like, I can see where people would be like, nothing happened. But I'm like, but everything happened. Like, that scene, I was not prepared. Kate Bateman, she just knows it,
Wow.
and it is sex. So
I
I
can't
think
believe you desecrated a
Panda Express.
To be fair, I once made out in a Wendy's parking lot, like in the car.
Ooh.
So,
Oh my God. Next, we just have to have someone who's, like, taken their graduation photos at Taco Bell, and we have the trifecta.
I went to high school with someone who did that.
See? 6 degrees. I actually think I did too.
It was a thing for the years that we were in high school.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I think.
I graduated in 2016.
Yes, 2017. So there was something about that time period. Everybody was into the, like, Taco Bell graduation photos. I was just, unfortunately, really into Taco Bell. It was so cheap and it was so nearby to the high school. Look, I'm not ashamed to say a bean and cheese burrito from Taco Bell hits. It's so good, and for what?
For like $1, truly. I don't know how much.
I recently read a contemporary romance where she loves Taco Bell, and the hero is like, "That's disgusting. What's wrong with you?" basically. And so he, like, in a romantic gesture, does bring her Taco Bell, like her exact order too. And she, like, leaves him a note that's like, "If you get there and I'm in the bathroom, just know that I died eating what I love." I was like, dead, because that's relatable romance content.
Taco Bell wooing and courting. I mean, you can't find that in historical romance.
That would work on me. And it's true, you wouldn't find it in historical romance. Bringing me my exact Taco Bell order, even though you think Taco Bell is disgusting, peak romance.
I am fascinated by eating in historical romance because, like, they have, like, some restaurants or, like, some, things, but, like, it wasn't as conventional, obviously, for, like, a man and a woman to, like, go out and eat. And so I'm always just so fascinated, like, where they find food. And even, like, my brain can't comprehend, like, cold storage for food, like, underground cellars. Like, I just can't fathom.
Or, like, what are they, like, the larder box or whatever they call it?
I mean, the most unattractive
thing.
name.
I just made that up.
Larder is something.
Is it something? Is it larder box or just larder? Whatever. You know what I'm talking about.
Both. Like, I think of just everything being, like, warm. Like, I need my water to be cold and not full of things. And so, like, so they're drinking, like, wine and mead and shit with their meals because the water is, like, horrifying. And it just stresses me out. And that, I just clearly, I like food, so I always think about that.
I don't think I've ever really thought about it.
Yeah.
But you're so right. Well. Yes. So, our topic today is fake courtship, historicals. Which is, I mean, you struggled to find.
I really did. Okay, because Marriage of Convenience really took me out because every book I was thinking of was like a marriage of convenience, and I was like, okay.
Well, Marriage of Convenience is massive in historical.
Yes,
in a way that
and
it's
so
not.
Every book where I was like,
sense.
please. Yeah, I was like, please be fake engagement. It was like, no, they got married. I was like, fuck you. I was so angry last night.
I have a theory because I was thinking about Marriage of Convenience versus fake courtship or fake engagement, and it's the opposite in contemporary. Every fake relationship, not every, most fake relationship books in contemporary tend to be fake dating. Yeah. You get very few Marriage of Convenience, or like it has to be, like you have to really give a whole interesting backstory to why they would need to get married, because in contemporary life, there just aren't a lot of reasons to get married for convenience.
Would you rather by someone, I don't know, she has to get his health insurance, so they get married, they've been friends,
Okay, I like
So
that. There's
it's
also
like the proposal kind of, you know, like she needs to get married to like have a visa or whatever,
Oh, yeah.
and then she needed his health insurance.
Right, so, like, there
So
are situations in contemporary
But
where you
those are
can make
like
a marriage of
truly,
convenience work. I
yeah.
like, I don't think I've read any, but you hear about, like, well, I've read them in historicals, just not in contemporary, but, like, for example, I'm really looking forward to reading In a Jam by Kate Canterbury because I've heard people
Mm.
talk about it, and it's marriage of convenience, and it's one of those books
Mhm.
where it's, like, for inheritance purposes, like, they have to get married to get their inheritance. There's a Beverly Jenkins I just recently read where that was a plot line. But, anyway, so my theory about marriage of convenience and fake relationships in contemporary versus historicals,
Mhm.
this half-baked theory that I thought about at like 3 a.m. last night, is that, again, in contemporary life, there are very few reasons, or you have to come up with the kind of like convoluted, like a green
Yeah.
card or inheritance thing that totally doesn't hold up in court, but whatever, reason to marry someone. Because usually, whatever their end game is with the fake relationship, it can be achieved by fake dating, which is
Mhm.
easily broken off. In contemporary life, it's not a big deal. In historicals, on the other hand, you have tons of marriage of convenience books, which makes
Yeah.
sense when you consider that the aristocracy, almost every marriage was a marriage of convenience. You want an alliance, a good match of like power and money and status.
Mhm.
The entire concept of the season is about making the best possible match you
Yeah.
can, and it's never about love. I mean, in the romances it is.
Mhm.
But like generally speaking, their approach to the season and marriage is making a good match,
Yeah.
which has nothing to do with feelings. And so it makes sense when, for like women of a certain age in their season, their entire goal hinges on marrying someone, regardless of feeling, like you're trying to make a
Mhm.
good match. At that point, a marriage of convenience is great for a lot of the heroines in these situations because they're
Mhm.
like, I don't need love. I need this marriage of convenience for whatever reason. For some critical thing, we have to get married. And they've accepted that this is a forever thing because you don't really get divorced typically unless you're
Yeah.
Sarah McLean heroine in The Day of
Or
the Duchess.
Sebastian Montgomery or whatever his name
True,
is.
true.
He got divorced,
His
yeah.
whole backstory.
Mhm.
On the other hand, whereas a marriage of convenience, the characters are in it for the long haul, unless they have some kind of like, we can annul it after a while, but that's pretty rare. Typically,
Mhm.
both characters are like, that's fine. I don't need love anyway. All in for the long haul, which you don't typically see in contemporaries because they don't have to be in the long haul anyway.
Mhm. That's
Courtship,
why,
on the other hand, you can't easily break off in
yeah.
historicals, at least not unless the heroine is fully prepared to be like, my reputation is going to be ruined one way or the other. It doesn't matter
Mhm.
to me, or they don't care about reputation anyway. But if you're fake engaged and your plan is to break it off, there's always that like the woman is going to be ruined in some way
Mhm.
from a broken engagement, regardless of whether it was her fault or not.
Mhm.
So fake engagement is harder to do in historicals, I think, because the stakes are higher than fake dating in contemporary. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yes. Yes, I'm thinking of like the books that I have, and like they're all like very, dare I say, kooky
I would hope so.
setups, because I'm like looking at them, I'm just, a lot of them aren't like your typical like, we just have to date to like go to my brother's wedding like for a date, you know, like
Right,
it's
because
not
you
like,
couldn't break that
yeah,
off casually.
yeah, yeah.
No, mine are all
I'm
they
trying to
are all like
think.
a heroine who either doesn't care about reputation,
Mm-hmm.
has no need for it, or in one case has fully accepted that her reputation is going to be ruined by this when it ends. But she goes
Mm-hmm.
into it knowing that and has accepted it and is like, that's fine. I need to do this for my family anyway. I'll go be a governess
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah, like I said, I had a hard time thinking of books that truly dealt with this, and like a few of them are a little bit, I'm playing fast and loose, because
That's
I mean
fair.
there were,
I have a couple that are too.
yeah, and there were so many books where I was like, damn, I want this to be that so I can talk about it, for no other reason than just wanting to talk about the book.
Well, and I think you came across the same thing where I would be like, oh, that's a fake, like they're pretending to be in love, but it's
Yeah,
marriage of convenience,
yeah,
which sometimes it has the element of
mm-hmm,
pretending to be in love. Some marriages of convenience don't. I'm thinking of
mm-hmm,
like Devil in Winter. They aren't pretending to be in love. They
yeah,
just go get married for the money. Um, But
I will
sometimes they do have that element of, like, pretending it's a love match. So
match.
it's kind of a
Yeah.
gray area there between fake relationship and marriage of convenience, where it's both.
Yes. I mean, I was literally like pacing in front of my bookshelves last night. I mean, for every book that I have read, there are at least probably 30 that I haven't read on these shelves. So, like, I
Relatable.
truly cannot say that none of them are. But for the ones I read, I was just going through it and I had the hardest time. But then, there were some I was like, oh my gosh, that is. And I was so proud of myself.
So do we wanna get into
Yeah.
the ones? Because the one I immediately thought of when you texted me and
And
were like, "I
I
can't think of any,"
forgot
I
all
was
about it.
immediately like, "Hannah, always be my Duchess."
Of course, I'll always be your Duchess. Okay.
And that's the end of the episode, folks.
It was just an elaborate
We're
engagement plot.
we're here every week.
We've talked enough for a full episode already, so I love that for us. We'll be able to edit a lot of that out. Even the sentence that I'm talking about, no one will ever hear it. Yes. So pretty women. We're all pretty women.
Oh, well, we
on
should
this
preface
podcast.
because this one and a few of the next ones we're going to talk about are
Yes.
published by Forever, and so we just want to mention I currently am interning for Forever in the publicity and marketing, which I mentioned in the intro, but in case you didn't know. But all our opinions are represented here. This is not, like, I'm not getting paid to do promo for these books. I just genuinely love them. I will not, like, lie about my opinions
And I have
on
2 books that she's never even read.
That's true. 2 of yours are Forever books that I have not read. So, just disclaimer completed.
And yeah, I have like 2 books that she hasn't even read yet that I totally thought she read, and I was counting on her to like have half of the plot in her brain.
So I have some other Forever books, but those ones I have not read. So disclaimer, all opinions
We've disclaimed it.
here on out are our own. There you go. Covering bases.
Okay. Okay, so my first note of this book is that was he the Stone one?
That is his name, or his
Blackstone.
Yeah.
So I have a little bit of math. It's like the transitive property or something. Stone equals hard. Duke equals stone. Duke equals hard. And there you go.
You just immediately took me back to my 10th grade English class where we learned, I think it's a syllogism, I want to say, is what you just did.
Ooh,
if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C.
Yeah.
So
I think because it's also a math thing.
Shout out to Miss Stuffick. I learned it in English.
Mr. Ramhill in math. So
well, I mean, I feel like it's taking a math principle and applying it.
It is, yeah.
Well, we're learning specifically about rhetoric, so I guess it was.
We love rhetoric,
rhetorical.
But yeah, that is because that's a lot of like. I think we would learn something similar in like the fallacy portion, trying to imply things. But yeah, this is a very hard, stony Duke. My favorite.
And his name is, he goes by Stone. His friends make fun of him. They're like, is he? To her. So, like, basic, we're not going to do a ton of plot the way that we did in the last trope roundup.
Because quite frankly, I don't have enough in my brain to recount the plot.
Well, we should give, like, a premise.
Of any of these books. Yeah. So Pretty Woman. I'm going to start there. He basically stumbles upon her. He's drunk, which is great. I love a good drunk scene. He's normally not drunk. Like, he normally doesn't really drink and imbibe, so already we're starting out strong. She rescues him from some pickpockets, and for some reason he's like, hey, I need you to pretend to be my fiance, because he had some land dispute and this person wanted him to be like married, kind of like in Leap Year. They could only rent the apartment if they were going to be married.
Well, so it was that I've talked about this book a lot. He is a businessman, and that's the only thing he cares about in his life.
Yes.
It's his business. He's always making deals, if you will. And he's trying to buy this house, and it's the owner of the house is a family man.
Because of the railroad or something, right?
Yeah, he wants to, like, tear it down. And it's this man's family home, basically. And so
He's a good man.
he is only going to sell it to him. He's like, I want someone very family oriented to buy it. I want this to be a family home for someone. And so Stone, who is of course he's hardened his heart, and it has to do with his very traumatic backstory because of course he is a romance hero. But he's like, that's disgusting. I'm just going to find a way to get around this. And his brilliant idea, which, as you said, he's drunk, he runs into her. I think he thinks that she's a prostitute initially because she's like standing outside the theater. And so, and my favorite part is that she immediately pulls a gun on him. She doesn't know who this random drunk man is, so she pulls a gun on him, and he's like, whoa. No.
It's like this 6 foot plus tall duke just stumbling around having a great time.
Iconic of him. And then yes, they almost get robbed, and they end up hiding in a very, very tight alley. And it is insta lust really works for me when it's like fast burn sexual tension and slow burn romance. And it is like they're shoved front to front in this alley, and immediately he gets hard, and they're both super horny, and they're both panicking about it because she's like wiggling around, and it's one of the where he's like, stop moving. Stop moving immediately. And so after that, they get into a carriage, and he's like, I am a genius. I have a brilliant idea. I will pay you a fortune, because he's super rich, to live in my house and pretend to be my fiance for 6 weeks. And she isn't going to do it. She's offended that he would even suggest it. And then she's like, wait, I have a sister back in Paris. She is an ex-ballerina from Paris. She's looking for work because she's been blackballed for rejecting a patron who,
from the ballet.
Yes, who tried to...
France?
Yeah, in Paris. And he tried to... basically ask for sexual favors, and she said no. And her sister, I think, also said no, and he put glass shards in her shoes and ruined her feet. So the whole she's in London looking for a job, to dance, because she can't in Paris because he's made sure no one will hire her, and she needs the money to support her sister who is still injured and recovering. So she agrees to live in his house and be his fake fiance for 6 weeks.
For 6 weeks, yeah. And the audiobook, Mary Jane Wells narrates. It was amazing. He plays her like a cello. Because he, there are some heroes who, whenever they need to, release the tension, they'll, go to the gym, the boxing arena or something.
Yes, they're pugilism academy.
Yes, but he just plays instruments.
Is that how you say that, by the way? Pugilism? I've never heard it out loud. Okay.
I think that's it. Yes, he just plays instruments, which he's just going hard on this piano because he's just so frustrated. And then he can play I played the cello in for all of my high school and a few years of elementary school, so I thought that was extremely hot. I love the cello.
It is hot. It's real hot. It gives me the perfect match that I always really like, where they complement each other in some way, because she is obviously a dancer, so she really loves art and music and all of that. And so they complement each other really nicely in that she is a dancer and he's a musician. And so they both have instances of doing the thing that they love and not realizing the other person is watching them. He builds her a dance studio, basically, because she misses dancing. And so he's like, hang on, let me renovate my ballroom for you. And so she dances, and he's watching and is incredibly attracted to her because obviously. But I also just really love, number one, Amalie Howard used to be a dancer, and I also used to be a dancer. So I love a dancer plotline.
I'm a terrible dancer.
Ballerinas in romance, because me too. There's a Diana Biller with Ghosts. The Brightest Star in Paris is also a ballerina romance. Also a great book. I loved it. Anyway, but she also includes the specific ballets and the specific dances that she will reference and do. And so I was able to just put together a playlist as I was reading, because she would mention he's playing this concerto by this person. She mentions specifically the music. And so you can go through and just listen, with the exception of some ballets don't always have like recordings on Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
So you just suffer because I want to know what that music sounds like. But the rest of them, you can listen as you go, which I love when there's music, specific music mentioned. And it's not just, and then he played. And I'm like, but what did he play? I want to hear the song while I'm reading. So, so good.
This book was just so fun. I had, I believe, Susanna, my friend from Bookstagram, Susanna Reads. She had read this. She actually did me a favor and made sure that this book would like meet the Steam requirements. Like I had her search in her Kindle because it was Read Now and NetGalley, and I was like, I'm not going to be burned again, even though I was burned like 10 times after that with different books. But I had her check for me. To make sure, because the illustrated cover I did not know, because like Amalie, like the other books I've read were really good.
Well, so to just kind of wrap up on Always Be My Dad, because we have some other ones we want to talk about, but number one, I feel like we didn't stress hard enough that he plays her like a cello.
Yes.
Which is the way that I sell that book to literally everyone,
Yes.
both in a professional capacity and a personal one. You have to lead with he plays her like a cello.
It like, how can you not? Because whenever, like, because it's just a very like sensual instrument.
It's a sexy instrument.
Yeah. Ooh,
Patience,
she's making some,
which we've brought up, or I have brought up several times. Patience by Lisa Valdez. They both play the cello, but hers is like she doesn't play it emotionally. It's a whole thing, and he does, and he's very good at it. And so they have these cello lessons together, and he tries. He has her, or he tells her she can't do it. But he tells her to basically stroke the instrument like a lover. And he does it, where he like kind of like I think he grinds into his instrument to try to get her to like unlock her emotions while she's playing. And she's like, I can't. There's this whole emotional, like that's when she reveals all of her backstory and this other guy that broke her heart and all these things. And she smashes the cello on the ground. It's very dramatic. And then, he's also making her play naked this whole time. And then...
She doesn't lead with that? What?
Sorry, I needed to clarify. And it's a whole thing because cellos aren't ladylike because you have to put it between your
wore
legs.
A skirt to
That's
my first cello lesson, and I was not prepared.
Mistakes were made. But so it's a whole thing where people will make comments to her about, I heard you can handle a big instrument between your legs, things like that. And so she thinks they're going to get it on because he's told her to, it's BDSM, Dom sub. He's told her to take all of her clothes off. And she's like, because she doesn't want to play the cello today anyway. And then he's like, now pick up your instrument. And she's like, huh? And so he tries to get her to stroke it like a lover. They have this whole thing. She smashes her cello. It's an emotional outpouring, epiphany, all of that. It's a big breakthrough. And then he sits her in front of him and makes her play his cello while he's like grinding into her from behind. Oh
my god.
There's a lot of things about that book, and I've said before, it's got some weird problematic gender essentialism type things. However, that cello scene.
Speechless.
So if you like cello scenes, Patience,
I sure do.
And Always Be My Duchess.
And the only other one that I can think of is an Eloisa James. It is her like Rapunzel. It's from her like fairy tale series. Yeah, I have it on my shelves too somewhere. And I wasn't a huge fan of that book because it was kind of, I mean, all of her books are weird, but that one just didn't work for me.
Once Upon a Tower?
But she's a cellist, and she's...
Is that what it's called?
Yes, Once Upon a Tower. Okay. And she's a very accomplished cellist. And that's one where I think they get married like really, really early. And then they're like really young. And the first half was really good, and then the second half lost me. But cello, and I want to love it because whenever I see that instrument, it's always the violin, never the cello. So,
well, so now this is a cello trope episode. Anyway,
there should be more
to finish.
And there's like a Harlequin book too, where she's like a cellist on the cover. I can look it up. I know.
I think I've seen the one you're talking about.
You've definitely seen it before.
Yes, because it's fairly recent. Okay, well, if anyone has other cello recommendations, our DMs are open.
Cello us.
What is wrong with you?
A lot.
Anyway, the trope at hand is fake relationship. Always Be My Duchess is that, and they're living together. And it's also really great opposites attract. They have a lot of mentions of him being ice and her being fire because she's very fiery and passionate.
that just
They're like,
sparked
ice can
something,
also
yes.
burn, then burn us
Yes,
both.
the line that was
Yes.
like, ice burns the hottest or something.
Yeah, there's a lot of like fire and ice conversation. Do you have another one that you want to pick that you really want to do more of a deep dive on? We can do a couple and then round up.
Yes. Okay. So my next one is, again, one you haven't read, Do You Want to Start a Scandal by Tessa Dare. I definitely tried to bring this one up in another episode, but I could not remember the title. But the book starts out, so this is like the last book in her Spindle Cove series. So, and then it's also like the last book in like another. So it kind of like brings them both together. And she is like the younger sister of Minerva from A Week to Be Wicked, and then the Anvil lady. She also has like her sister is like the whatever most attractive one. And so her mother is a huge like matchmaker, meddler, and she's very annoying to everyone. So there is this he's a lord, so he's not, I don't know, is he like an earl or something? Whatever he is, he's the most eligible bachelor at this house party. And so she goes to him one night and she's like, hey,
I love house parties, by the way.
yes, lots of good house party wrecks at some point will come from us. So she goes to find him and she's like, hey, I just want to let you know my mother's gonna try to like trap us, like don't like fall for any of her tricks, like I don't want to get married, like you don't want to get like just stay away. So they're in this office and she doesn't realize that he's like trying to pick the lock on this desk because he is a spy and he was here to investigate the owner of the house party. Like he's here to like investigate that man. So this is his office that for some reason they got into. And so he's just like, why are you talking to me? Like, what are you doing? And he, in the previous book, he got jilted by his like fiance because they were engaged for like 10 years, but he was off being a spy. And then she married his brother. A whole thing. So he's done with love and sees her and he's like, whatever. And then they hear someone come into the room. So what they do is they like hide on this like window seat behind some curtains. Okay. So then all you start to hear is they're like nestled together. Then you start to hear some like crazy like monkey sex happening, like murder sounds. Okay. And you're like, what? And so she's like, what is happening? And he's like, I know what's happening. And that whole thing wraps up and they're like disentangling from this like couch, whatever, when the people leave. And they like leave a scent, like a perfume scent and like a garter. So they have like a few clues of who it was. And then they were just going to go about their business and leave. But then like the son of the people hosting the party comes in screaming bloody murder because he thinks someone was getting killed. So he was like, murder noises. Someone's getting murdered, sir. Why are you murdering her? And so they have to, it's almost like a marriage of convenience because they have to like technically get married because now she's been ruined. They think that she was doing the murder noises. And so neither of them really wants to get married. So she's like, let's just pretend to be engaged until I can figure out who this was in this room. So it's like Clue. So like the back of the book is like, was it Lord Canby with the maid on the divan, stuff like that. So she's like trying to be, Sherlock Holmes over here. And obviously at some point he really wants it to be real. There's like romantic arson. It's larceny.
Arsony.
In no episode will I go without butchering a word, okay? At one point, I'm gonna make fetch happen, okay? So he could like, there's like romantic arson, and it's also very
that.
Yeah, it's a very hot book. There's like a bathtub scene.
It must be hot if there's arson.
He's just.
Can you tell I took a stand-up comedy class in college?
No, you didn't.
It's okay. Technically, it was a I don't remember the exact, but it was performed comedy as social commentary was what the class was. But the major assignments were learning how to write and perform stand-up. My final in that class was a 10-minute stand-up set.
Oh my god!
That specifically had to include social commentary in it.
I would be atrocious at that. So good on you.
As bad as you think. I was surprisingly good at it. I did a lot of
think
bits
it's
about
unsurprising. I could see how you'd be good at it.
And I'm a Catholic, for the record.
Yeah.
So Catholicism, making fun of myself. And I just have to clarify, because one time I was like, well, a lot of my bits are about Catholicism. And somebody was like, are you? Like I shouldn't be making fun of them if I'm not one. And I'm like, well, I feel like the Catholics can stand to be poked at. Like, we can poke fun at the Catholics. Yeah. We're not exactly punching down at the Catholic Church, you know what I mean? But yes, I am. So a lot of the jokes were about myself.
Yeah.
And it was like that and theater kids and the ways that they overlap. And Veggie Tales. So there was a lot going on. This is completely not related to anything. What were we? Arson. Romantic arson.
Romantic arsony.
Romantic arsony.
Oh, God. Yeah, so there's like bathtub. It's like very low angst. What did I write? Yeah, I wrote sexy arson in my notes. So
sexy arson.
And he's just like exasperated the entire time because she's I love her so much, but she's a little chaotic, and he in turn is a lot like the other stone. The other stone, whatever he was, he's a duke. I don't know what this one is. But yeah, this book was hilarious. The first time I read it was just like the physical copy. I think I gave it like 4 stars, and then I listened to the audiobook when I was doing a puzzle, and it like was so much better than an audiobook because it was like I was like watching a movie, like in that sense.
There's something about audiobooks while you puzzle.
I know. Okay, side note, I say fix a puzzle. Apparently that's I know. I have been told that's not a thing.
No, it's not a thing.
I know, but if you think about it, you have a sheet of cardboard. It's die cut into all these pieces. It's broken apart, and you have to fix it. So I grew up with my mom saying that because she grew up with her mom saying that. So my family says I had to like mentally tell myself not to say fix just like 5 seconds ago when I was talking.
And it's not
earlier.
A Midwest thing?
No, I think it's just my family thing. So I was told by someone that they were like, why did you say that? And I was like, what do you mean? I'm fixing a puzzle. What else do you do to a puzzle? Apparently people just do puzzles. I'm like, I'm not doing a puzzle.
Do it. I was gonna, because there isn't really a verb. No. I would say doing a puzzle, or if I really needed, I would say putting a puzzle together.
But you're fixing it. Fix the feelings. Okay?
I understand that's just not a thing.
I know. And so that's why apparently I just make up all these words like arsony and sunsetting, because my mom, like, she prepared me. She did not prepare me for life. She feeds me these fake words and expects me to thrive.
You're like Pandora, Ravenel, just making up words.
I truly did not think, like, no one, I have found 0 people who have said that in my life.
Puzzling is also a verb. I'm puzzling, I think. Either that or somebody made that up and I adopted it because I was like, yeah, I love puzzling.
So people can create all these different words around puzzles, but you can't say fix.
It's not that you can't. It's just that if you say it, you're going to get weird looks.
Oh, I have. And then I asked my dad, I was like, so you married into this family and you never told anyone? And he's like, no.
You didn't write an expose on these puzzle fixers?
Like, you've let me go about my life, say fix a puzzle, when you have never heard anyone else besides your wife and her mother say it?
I mean, to be fair, how frequently does puzzling
come up
in your conversation?
We are a puzzle family. So, like, frequently we talk about puzzles. So they have let me go out into the world.
All right.
Saying fix a puzzle.
Well, most people don't have conversations about puzzles frequently enough for this to be an issue.
But apparently just one conversation. I was having one conversation with a person and they absolutely shook my worldview. Because of that. So yeah, read Do You Want to Start a Scandal by Tessa Dare. I'm assuming most people, like, if they've read Tessa Dare, you probably read that book. Again, that series, my favorites are 2, 4, and then that's 5. And so good. And I was so happy to realize that was like a fake engagement. But then obviously it's real.
So we are running low on time, and I don't really have any other that I want to do a deep dive on, but I would like to just kind of mention my other ones and give a very brief premise for them as recommendations. So mine are, and let me see, 1, So these next two are both forever books. The first one
Mhm.
is Any Rogue Will Do by Bethany Bennett. This one is kind of second chance also. They had almost kind of started a romance. He's the hero is Scottish, and so he was dealing with a lot of backlash after he inherited. I think he's an earl, maybe he's something.
Not a
Um,
clue.
I don't think he's an earl. He's something. Whatever he is, he's inherited a title, and obviously we know the aristocracy and the ton does not like Scottish
Mhm.
brutes, quote, inheriting their titles. It was her first season, and they hit it off. I think she also kind of had a hard time. She's also a plus size heroine. So
Mhm.
she is plus size. He is Scottish. They're generally shunned. But in her first season, he is into her. They start this kind of, not like romance really, but they're attracted to each other. They're kind of flirting. And he goes to talk to her father. Actually, I think they did have a little bit of a romance. They had reached a point where she was really he was going to come call on her, and she was expecting him. And he went to talk to her father, or went to call on her and ended up talking to her father. And her father basically was like, get out and don't talk to my daughter. Like, really was
Mhm.
nasty to him because he's this big Scottish guy. And so he is very hurt by this and ends up talking to the wrong people. Like, I think he was basically gossiping with some other men, and he was feeling very hurt about this, and they asked something about her, and he called her, I think, a paper doll princess,
Yes.
and basically
John
says
Mayer.
she's very pretty but not interesting at all. Basically got nothing going on upstairs.
Mhm.
Like, calls her vapid,
And
and
I love an overheard insult. Goes a little
yes.
bit extreme, but
And so it obviously ends up in the gossip rags. She reads it. She was expecting him to call on her and I think propose, and instead he doesn't show up, and then she gets a newspaper of him insulting her. It completely ruins her first season, and then I think her mother dies immediately afterwards. So
yes.
she goes back to the country, and she spends the next 10 years there because she's basically running the estate for her father, and she loves it, and she wants to keep doing that. She has no interest in getting married. She just wants her father to let her run the estate, and he won't. And he says, you have to get married, or else I think he says, I'll make
You
you
don't
get
get so
married. Oh,
so
you don't
I just
get.
read
Yes.
I read my review, and what I really liked after reading my review was that when two characters start a book, they have a set goal. For Lottie, it was to get her dowry because she
Right.
wanted to stay
Hmm.
and do what she was doing. And then obviously he had some goal or another.
He has a
And
distillery.
yes. And so normally at the end of romances, you see both people complete these goals while also facing their biggest fear, because that always happens. But in this one, she just doesn't get her dowry. And she was okay with that. Because, like, a lot of times there's still like something standing in the way of them getting together. And it's like, I want to marry you, but I still want this dowry for like these specific reasons. And she just forfeits it because she loves him, and like they just do it. And I thought that was really nice because I barely see that.
Yes. And she ultimately gets, it's not that she necessarily wanted the dowry for the sake of having her dowry.
Yeah.
It was that with that dowry,
It was
there was this very lovely property she was going to buy,
yep.
and
Yep.
run her own household and run the estate, which is what she was doing at home, but her father wasn't going to let her continue to do it. So her ultimate
Yep.
goal is essentially running an estate because that's
Yep.
what she is passionate about. So no, she doesn't get her dowry, but ultimately her goal is completed because she becomes,
Mhm.
I don't remember what rank he is, but his wife, and
Mhm.
gets to run, and he's perfectly happy to like
Yep.
be her partner rather than doing
Yep.
everything himself. So it works. But that one also is a faking game. So he ruins her first season. He's heard about it. They're brokenhearted. She goes off to the country, and then her mother dies, and so she ends up spending the next 10 years there, and then they run into each other again. There's some, I think, carriage accident or something causes they're at this inn,
Yes.
and I think she's
Because
in the accident and he's at the inn, and I don't know.
it
It's been
was
a
a
long time
very
since I've
juicy
read it.
scene, because then there was like
It
a
was really good.
bathtub.
It was
Um
excellent. So they run
because
into each other.
yeah,
Yes.
because Bethany sent like little lip balms that smelled like all these people,
Okay.
as like a pre-order incentive, or like incentive for like the second book. So then because I think she smelled like lemon or something in this one.
That sounds
And
right.
it was like a big theme. So
Yeah, so they run into each other, and it's this very delicious moment of recognition. It's so
mhm.
good. Um, And then I don't remember exactly how it comes. I think they spend a couple of days there, and it's not until they're back in the city that it ends up coming to a head. Again, it's been a long time since I've read this book. But whatever the case is, romance reasons, her father has told this other guy that he can marry her.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he said she would have a certain amount of time to find a husband, he kind of goes back on that and is like, here, marry this one. And he's slimy. He's really awful. And so she's like, I need a fake fiance to get this guy off my back so that I can.
Mm-hmm.
And so she asks him. They've kind of become friends, I think, by this point. And he feels so awful about the way that because I don't think he realized that he ruined her season.
No.
He understands it wasn't great, but it's not until they meet up again like 10 years later and she tells him that it ruined her entire season and chances of marriage. And he feels really horrible about it. And so to him, he agrees because this is his way of making up for that and helping her ultimately achieve her goal. And of course, they fall in love. There's some actually very good sex scenes. There's one against a tree. Listen, because it lives in my head rent free. It's what do you, is that frottage? I don't know what the term is.
Frottage?
Or whatever, dry humping.
No, you're like me. Frottage?
Is that not how you say that word?
I have no clue. I don't even know what word you're trying to say.
Hold on, I'm Googling.
This is an actual word, I bet.
I know the word. Frottage. I don't know how you say it. I think it's frottage.
Yeah, it is. Rubbing
the clothed body of another person in a crowd. Well, I don't know why it has to be in a crowd according to this.
It's like when you rub past someone on accident, like saying,
no,
excuse me.
Non-penetrative sex. Basically, it's grinding. It's non-penetrative. So he has her up against a tree. They've been banging not actually banging because they haven't had penetrative sex. But I don't know. It's probably like she asks him to, because she's not going to get married anyway. Whatever.
Yeah.
They're in a chair the first time. That one's really excellent. They're like in the kitchens. It's a whole thing. And then there's a scene against a tree. Listen. And it's like like they're bare, but he's not penetrating her. He's just grinding his dick on her clit, basically.
Yeah.
And she is begging him to put it in. She's like, please, just one stroke. Like, just one inside, and he won't do it. And it's hot. Listen, I love a dry humping, grinding. All of that is very hot to me. I think it's underrated. That scene against the tree. I don't even remember their first. They spend a night together. I don't even remember what that scene is like because the tree scene took up so much of my brain. I was going to do a quick overview of this book, but at any rate, it's a fake engagement and it's great.
My review from over a year ago when I first read this, and only time I read it, I gave it 4 peppers, which is hilarious because it would not be. So I
think it's 2 or 3 for me.
Yeah, I know. I don't even remember enough of it to accurately tell myself that I was being horrific. But yes, that one was. I think I liked the next book better in that series, but that one was a pretty solid. That one's really
great. If you read, wait, this is important because this is a series that I'm an idiot with, which you have. I was really dumb and I should have put dots together.
Oh, this is the one you were talking about.
Yes. So, God, disregard everything I just said if you haven't read this. Okay, the point is, if you decide to read The Misfits of Mayfair by Bethany Bennett, it's a 3-book series. You start with Any Rogue Will Do. Do not read the plot summaries, the blurbs, for either of the 2 later books. You need to go into the second book blind.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. My favorite, it's not gonna spoil anything, but the heroine in the second book, she's really angry at him and he doesn't quite know it, and then she sucks him off until he's almost to completion, and then she just leaves the fucking room.
It's so iconic.
That was my favorite thing ever. It was beautiful.
My jaw
I was we need more of that. We need more of that.
Jaw on the ground. I was bowing down to her. That is the baddest bitch energy. She walked out. I actually will never recover.
To this day, I think about that because I want that to happen more.
The third book also I think the third book is the spiciest of them. It's a single mom.
And it's also like a one-night stand.
Yeah, it's a one-night stand
Which you
initially,
don't
and
see a
then
lot
they
of.
end up in the same place again, and so they agree to a no strings attached affair that obviously strings sure do attach themselves. But that one, there is a mutual masturbation scene, and she has a wooden dildo that is named Roger.
She does.
And Roger makes quite the appearance in that book.
Is the audiobook out yet? Do you know?
I have no
Because
idea.
I like started the physical copy and then just did not continue reading because I have so many other things.
Indeed,
I
I
was
do not
enjoying
know.
what I was reading, but the audiobook hadn't been released yet. So I've been like waiting. I think it was like the 11th or something of October. So hopefully it's out and I can just like
Well,
listen to that.
Roger's got a great scene. There's also a really cute because it's single mom, and so obviously there's some really great bonding scenes between him and her son,
And we
and it's
know I
so
do love
lovely.
that.
It's so good, but he also, because he's a kind of piratical Navy captain. Like, he's not a pirate, but
As he
he's
should
basically
be.
a pirate.
Yeah.
And so he's got a lot of tattoos.
I was gonna say, does he have tattoos?
He
Because I think
does.
he has
He does.
tattoos.
And
Yeah.
there's a scene where she, like, morning after type scene, where she walks into his room and her young son, he's showing her son his
Oh.
tattoo, and the son is watercoloring them.
Oh.
It's so cute.
Oh.
It's so good. Anyway, those are not fake relationship. They're just excellent. Okay, rapid fire or unless you want to go. Give us
Well,
the
I was just gonna say two other forever ones are
sure.
Someday My Duke Will Come by Christina Britton. I've loved the entire series. I think the last two, the one that hasn't been released yet, is my favorite. And then the one before that was A Virgin Hero, and it was very emotional. It was a very emotional book. I was like not expecting to feel that much. This one, basically he just has a really horrible mother, I think, and he like recently accepts a dukedom because his brother died and he doesn't want to get married to his brother's fiance. So Clara, she has been ruined before, so she never wants to get married. Rolls into town and he like makes an appearance in the first book, and he basically is like, hey, can you pretend to be my fiance so I don't have to marry this other one. I think my only thing in that one is I think the mother was really bad and she was really annoying, but I do think she got proper justice. I can't quite remember, but I think in my review I was happy, which if I wasn't like raging, then that's a good sign. And then the other one from Forever is Not the Kind of Earl You Marry by Kate Pembroke. This book was my entire personality when it first came out. It was just so amazing because the intro scene is the heroine and her brother eating a normal breakfast. And then he comes in. He is the Earl of Norwood, William. He barges into their breakfast area and he's like railing at her. Like he's like yelling at her because there's been this engagement announcement in the paper that she is married, she's getting married to him, and he's like, "Why the hell would you do this? I don't want to get married to you. That was so rude. You think I'm going to marry you? I'm not." And he like goes off. And then her and her brother just sitting there like, what are you talking about? And then it becomes very clear that they knew nothing of this. He's a political guy, so someone posted this to try to disrupt his reputation. And because then he's like, the villain thought that then they would like not stay engaged and then it would be a whole scandal. So then once he settled down and approached it logically, that since they had no clue, he actually held accountability and was like, I'm very sorry for just absolutely destroying your life at that moment. And it was lovely. And then the entire book is them just fake dating. I don't think she really intended to get married, so she was just like, yeah, I'll do it. There's another really cute scene with kids in there. He like gives them a piggyback ride. And they write really cute letters to each other. And then there was one full sex scene that I really liked. And it was introduced by a meddling rainstorm, which I always love.
Well, so similar premise, not the same premise, but different execution, which you have also read, and we have mentioned before, so I won't talk about it too much, but My Darling Duke by Stacey Reed is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, or, inspired by Beauty and the Beast vibes, but with a disabled hero. And that one also has the premise, I mean, in this case, she actually does place the announcement in the newspaper that they are engaged. And that's the one that I mentioned where she just accepts that she's going to be ruined because her family is poor and she needs the money
Yeah.
and the status to get her younger sisters into ballrooms and help them make good matches. And so she's like, that's fine. When all of this comes out, it'll ruin my reputation, but I am accepting that and I will go be a governess somewhere. But she basically just, there's this reclusive duke. He was in a horrible, I think, fire accident that killed his parents and left him really scarred and physically disabled. And he was very powerful, but this prevented him from doing the things that he needed to do. So he basically just left and went to his castle in Scotland, and nobody's seen him in like a decade. He just lives in his castle in Scotland alone. And so she's like, he doesn't show up. He either won't know, or if he does, nobody's seen him in a decade, like whatever. And so she just announces or mentions to the newspapers that they're engaged. And he does end up coming to London, but more because he's intrigued. He's not angry. He's just so intrigued by her and all the things that the newspapers are writing. So he shows up and is like, yeah, sure, I'll play along. I'll be your fake fiance. I'll help you out. But you do have to come hang out with me in my castle in Scotland unchaperoned. It's good. And I've talked about this one before, but it's like non-magical healing disabled hero. And they actually like talk about the disability. It's a part of his character arc. I think it's handled really well. It was recommended to me by a disabled person who was like, I really love this rep. So, I mean, I can't speak to it, but I have been told that it is very good representation. It's also just handled really, it's just a really good book. It's Stacey Reid. We've talked about Stacey Reid before.
And that's like a fan favorite. So, everyone I know has recommended that book. Like if they're a Stacey Reid person, most of the time they start out with that one, or that was like their gateway drug was like that book for her. My next one is 4 Weeks of Scandal, and I quite literally read this less than a month ago. I remember very little, except that he is immediately naked in the first chapter. He's like in a lake. He's like taking a bath. He comes back to his house that his father just died, and then now he's got this house, and he is like a professor or like a scholar of Greek and like mythology, so he's automatically hot. He's got a very small dog, and he jumps into this pond in the back of the house because he's hot and sweaty, and he's also just hot. And then the heroine walks in. She's got a big dog, and she thinks that this is her house because this was her father's house, but her father and his father always like gambled. So they would always like gamble away things. So they have to spend the next 4 weeks finding who actually has the deed to this house. Because at one point, her father gambled away her to marry him.
I love that.
Her sister won her back in like the first book of the series. So that was a whole thing. And so neither of them really know who owns it truly. He thinks he has more of a right because it was his actual house, or his father had died like 4 days after getting it because he was so happy that he won it from the guy. So he was like, there's no way that it's not our house at this moment. So that's the whole thing. If you've seen the movie Funny Farm, in that movie, they like basically go to this house, they have to repair it, and they think it's a very charming town, and like all the townspeople are actually crazy. And while that wasn't like quite the same thing here, I just found like the cast of like the side characters in this book really charming. Old Joe, I would die for you, Old Joe. Just saying. He like, so they have to pretend to be married because they're living together and trying to fix up this house. She wants to sell it. He wants to live there. HGTV all the way. And they get all the townspeople to help them rebuild it. And then Old Joe is like, I will like stay in the stables if like I'll clean, like if you let me stay there, because he was homeless. And it was just very cute. And the past few Megan Frampton books have been really fun, and this was no exception. And I listened to the audiobook, and I'm not a Justine Eyre narration fan, but I could handle it, and I gave it 5 stars, even with her narration, which does not happen all the time, like never. So I thought that was a really good one. And then, do you have any more?
I have 3, but I'm not gonna do like plot. I'll just rapid fire them. So the first one is The Perks of Loving a Wallflower, also forever. It's not a fake engagement. but it is a fake. The beginning of the book is a fake courtship as a way of putting off one heroine's mother, basically, who just really wants her to get married. It's kind of I say that it's sapphic. Tommy uses she, her pronouns, but she reads as non-binary is the way that I usually explain it. Her sort of superpower, all the Winchester siblings have very unique skills that they use to carry out vigilante justice. And Tommy's is that she's basically a master of disguise. Like, she will fully turn into other people. So she spends a lot of time in disguises. And so the way that she gathers the courage to introduce herself to Philippa, her crush, is by basically taking her disguise is a young baron who exists for other reasons in the family lore, but so initially they meet and Philippa doesn't know who she is. She thinks that she's a young charming baron, and her mother doesn't love that, but she thinks that it'll help like get her more like better matches, and so they kind of
the interest.
And the thing that I liked about this one is that very early on Tommy tells her that she is Tommy Winchester and not Baron Vanderbean.
I love when that's not hanging over
Philippa's
your
like,
head.
cool. Can we keep like doing this though to keep my mom off my back? And it's a very lovely romance. I enjoy that one a lot. The Rogue Not Taken, which I talked about at length in the road trips, but that one is both they pretend to be married so that he claims to be her husband after she's been shot because other characters aren't letting him go with her to find a doctor, and he's like, she's my wife, so then they have to pretend to be married. And then also to piss off his dad, they pretend that she's his fiance. Excellent. So it's a 2-for-1. And then I have 2 more. Never Fall for Your Fiancé, which was one of the first historicals I read. It's Virginia Heath, I want to say is her name.
I got that one right here. I literally was like, what book is she talking about? As it's sitting right next to me. I am so interesting.
It's very silly, but in a good way. It's very rom-com-y.
It's like a screwball comedy. It has not the best reviews, so this is maybe a controversial opinion.
Yeah,
but
it's kind of
it was fucking hilarious.
I thought it was fun. It's kind of My Fair Lady-esque in that she's very poor and she needs the money.
Her name is Minerva, and he has been telling everyone that he is engaged to someone named Minerva.
No, he's been telling his mom.
Yeah. So his whole plan is to find someone named Minerva to pretend to be his fiance.
Yeah, I forgot about that. And he meets her on the street.
Her name is Minerva.
And he's like, hey, I could pay you a whole lot of money to come be my fiance. But his mother is in America, I believe. And she is like, surprised I'm coming to visit you. And so he's like, quick, I've got to find somebody right now. I think she's visiting for Christmas. And so she and her sisters come to stay with him. And he's trying to basically train her to be like an upper class.
And I love My Fair Lady. Fiance. It's one of my favorite like plot setups. It's like mild Christmas vibes. If you've seen the movie Christmas in Connecticut, either of them, the remake or the old one, or Skipping Christmas with Ben Affleck, both of those are like hired family moments, and I love that. And so this one really reminded me of that. And then there's this hilarious scene where someone has to play like Mozart, but like the mother hates Mozart, and then the mother has like this husband. Yeah, there's just so many layers, and I thought it was truly. I was on a boat while I was reading this, and I almost fell off because I was laughing so much. And my one note was from my review was I did appreciate the shameless nipples. So, because it wasn't very steamy.
Yeah, it's not super steamy.
No,
but it is,
and it's a very long book. So I would maybe do the audiobook, like if you've got like some background stuff. But screwball comedy is really what I would
just very charming, kind of bonkers premise.
And I really enjoyed
itself very seriously. It very much leans into the like you've hired a
and
woman
it was better. It's better than the Susan Enoch one that hasn't come out yet, or maybe it just came out. That one also has an illustrated cover. It's also like very screwball, but that one just kind of fumbled the pass like at 50%. But this one I thought was just very funny. And then the second one, like I said, I really enjoyed that one too.
I need to read that.
It's one of her sisters. And it was just I love the cover of that one, and I found it charming. So I like Virginia Heath. I think she is a good writer, and she has a humor that's very close to mine, I think. So like that can sometimes like make or break a book for me, you know, if I just don't relate to the humor at all. But she works.
Yes. And then my last one, and I won't say much about it because it doesn't come out until March.
Mm.
And it's on NetGalley now if you're listening to this like on or near release date.
Woohoo.
It's the third Manda Collins Ladies Guide book. It's called A Spinster's Guide to Danger and Dukes.
Mm-hmm.
This series, I usually say it's very light steam. It's honestly kind of 50-50 split for me. Like it's equal parts cozy-ish mystery. It's a mystery and a romance. So if you don't, and I normally don't love external plots, but I find these books so charming. I think the first one is serial killers they're trying to track down, which sounds like whoa, but it works. And he's a Scotland Yard detective, and she's a meddlesome journalist. The tagline on that's what got me to pick up that book. It was one of the first Forever books I ever read, and I was in, I think, Target looking at the books. And the tagline on that book is, of all the crime scenes in all the world, she walks into his twice. Which is an incredible tagline.
Yeah.
And then the second one is a second chance romance, and it's a kidnapping, and there's also a murder. Mm-hmm. So there's some things going on there. And then this third one is a fake engagement. They meet in the second book. He's a duke, and she is lying about her identity.
I do love a good like mistaken and or lying about identity.
Well, and I will say she reveals it to him in the first chapter, so it's not a thing that's hanging over your head. Well, she was lying to her, like she had her reasons, was not entirely truthful about who she was. And then he kind of rescues her, helps her out, and she's like, look, here's who I am. My sister's been accused of murdering her awful husband. I'm going to try to help. And so he's like, well, I'll help you with that. And he can tell that she's kind of headstrong, doesn't want to take help without giving anything in return type. Like she's a little proud about it. They also had a really rough initial meeting. She thinks he's very like arrogant and awful. And so he's like, well, I'm going to my like grandmother's house party, and I know she's going to have a ton of debutantes all vying for my hand. She really wants me to get married. So how about you pretend to be my fiance to keep them off my back, and I will help prove that your sister is innocent. So it's a fake engagement at his family home where there's a bunch of other women who thought they're not a super huge part of the plot. And also someone's obviously murdered her brother-in-law who she was supposed to marry. He's really awful. She has this awful stepfather who was also involved in this engagement. There's blackmail. There's It took a turn. I love a good, like, whoa, where is this plot going moment? And so I won't say too much about what it is because it's kind of a shock when you get to it. But there are some spooky caves, some cult type things going on, and then they get it on in the caves. So, again, not super steamy. There's only, like, the one scene. Yeah. But
if you want more caves, again, A Week to Be Wicked by Tessa Dare. If you want cult-like behavior, A Duchess by Midnight from Chairs Michaels. Literally, like, an absurd, wonderful book. There's, like, sexy bird watching. Like, she gets absolutely railed while watching birds on a stump.
Listen, bird watching and bug watching. Shout out to the new Christina Britton, it's coming out in November.
Yeah. Literally. I just love these heroines getting absolutely railed while doing what they love and who they love. But that one, she's charged with like, she's not really a governess, but she's like if you were in a pageant, you'd have like a pageant trainer. She's like someone who like trains debutantes kind of. And so she's been tasked by him, or really by someone else, but he's related to them, to corral these two kids who grew up in a cult. And it's like in her it's in her fairy tale series. So she's like the wicked stepsister. And so you have like the Cinderella character. She's like married to like the prince. And so she's like a side character, and she's like her sister, and he's friends with the prince. So then they both get to the place, whatever. It was a great book, and the cult was very unexpected. And the book changed my life.
New episode. Cult.
Really, who knew we could have two? So my only other one is The Gunslinger's Guide to Avoiding Matrimony. I was telling Caroline about it last night. So it's not necessarily your run-of-the-mill fake engagement. There's this town. What's it called? It's called something.
It's called something.
It's like Desolation. So it was called something. So the town is called Desolation. And this is book 2 in the series, but I read it first because I'm chaotic like that. And you have to be married to be in this town, basically. So like if you like roll into this, it's a Western. So if you roll into this town on a horse named Friday, you have to get married. And that's the only way, because they don't want anyone to like be like a bad influence, and they don't want like any loiterers. So he's got like 4 weeks to be married. And
as
then we have
4 weeks of scandal, which is different.
And then do you want to start a scandal?
Which is also different.
Yeah.
6 degrees.
So then she doesn't have a husband. She's single, but then her father is he has a very bad gambling problem, and he is consistently threatening to gamble away her house, and she's not okay with that. So she needs to get married, because in the deed or whatever, once she gets married, it goes to her.
Are there no kids in this town? Hey, you have to be married in this town. What age?
New people.
Okay.
Yes. So like
if you're from here, you're cool.
Yes. So she was fine. But like if you're new coming in, like they don't want random people. It's a very safe space, so they don't want anyone coming in. So he rolls up, and he like started a rumor about the sheriff in town, that he was like the best shot, and then the sheriff got like ravaged by fans. So he's already kind of scared being there. And she goes down to the bar, and in the street, he doesn't know that they're performing marriage ceremonies just randomly, like a Renaissance festival. And so she goes there specifically to find a husband, because she just wants to marry someone to get this deed so her father can't gamble it away. And they like get off to a really bad start. She like takes him out into the street to like yell at him, and then they're like yelling at each other, and this guy's like trying to hand them a piece of paper, and then like they get wrapped around with like the like tying like string or whatever, like however yes. And so they don't technically sign the paper, but technically they're married now. So then she doesn't want a husband, but she also wants to keep the thing. So she's like in for the marriage. He does not want to be married. Like they either said you can get married or you can find a job. And he is just he's terrible at jobs. He goes he like cycles through all these jobs and like causes
terrible
fires.
At jobs.
Like he's just not equipped for anything besides being a gunslinger.
Okay, also me.
Did
you know this character was actually based on me?
My whole thing was, where can I apply to be this gunslinger's holster? Was my whole thing.
That's deeply phallic. You love to see it.
Yep. And I also found it very hot that he wanted to be clean. Like, he's a very clean person. He hates being dirty, so he hates being, like, dusty.
Oh, like Tom Severin, right? Is that his book?
You're asking the wrong person.
Isn't that
I don't know. I don't remember.
No. It's not Tom Severin. It's not Lisa Kleypas at all. It's a similar, like, better. They come from...
That makes me
They
feel
come
a
from
lot better.
poverty. It's a Sarah McLean, and I don't remember which one. Oh, it's Never Judge a Lady by Her Cover. He has a swimming pool. That's his exercise. He has a swimming pool in his house. And the dramatic like trauma reveal is that he grew up very poor.
And dirty.
I think maybe it's a different. No, I think it is this one because they have swimming pool sex.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was like a very small child, he was a chimney sweep essentially, which was incredibly dangerous, and they would send the small kids up there to do it even though it was super dangerous. And so he basically was dirty all the time, and there was no like he wasn't allowed to bathe because he was just going to go get dirty again. And so as soon as he was wealthy enough, he has this kind of obsession with being clean, which is why he likes to swim, because he never wants to be dirty again.
That's interesting.
Oh, my heart. Anyway.
So she's basically trying to, so their marriage isn't official until there's consummation, because they never actually signed the paper.
Classic.
So she's pretending to be married officially because she wants the house. He doesn't want to be married. So like it's like a messy marriage situation. Like maybe it's not really fake engagement, fake whatever, but I'm going to count it because I wanted to talk about it.
It's closer to marriage of convenience, but I'll allow it.
Yes. So she's like trying to seduce him. They're technically legally maybe not married. I don't know.
It's like Portrait of a Scotsman, but in reverse.
Yes. So she's trying to seduce him to consummate the marriage so that it's official. And she's told him, she's like, you can literally like leave and never see me again. That's fine. I just want to be married. And there's this really hot scene. That's why I mentioned he wanted to be clean. So they have like these bathhouses, and it's like I think of like Roman baths, like they were huge in Rome. And so she like saunters in and she's like, hey, so she's trying to seduce him. And so she's trying to be like, I will be like the best wife. I mentioned Susanna earlier, but she was like, yes, I'll do the cooking. Yes, I'll do the cleaning. Like she was like there to like serve. So she like starts to like clean, like bathe him. And he's just like really trying to fight it. Like he's like, I'm fine. And it was really hot and hilarious.
Earl takes all.
Yes. And it was a very funny book. And I loved it. It was like my first Western. And it has very modern language. So if you're one of those who doesn't like very modern like speech in historicals, I wouldn't read it, but that doesn't bother me really. It made it actually easier, I think, to like be introduced to a Western, because frankly, that scares me a little bit. But it was a great time, and it was truly romantic comedy. And I want to get ravished in a haystack. So,
as someone who has a horse, that would not be comfortable.
No,
hay is not comfortable.
They also ravish in hay in a Week to be Wicked as well. That book can just also be brought up at every moment. But yeah, that's all she wrote.
We did it.
There
you have it. Fake relationships, fake courtship engagements in historicals.
Mm-hmm. Well, we did not introduce ourselves.
We sure didn't. I was thinking about that just now too.
To remind you, if you do not know, I am Hannah.
I am Caroline. We read a lot of romance and talk about them on the internet.
We do. Prepared to be ravished, romanced, and alarmed all at the same time.
And alarmed? Oh,
I feel like we are
really
alarming.
selling ourselves.
If you're not alarmed by at least one sentence out of our mouths, like, what are you doing? Or what are we doing?
Have we even achieved our goal?
Yeah.
Have we even romanced you? You can follow us on socials. Salty Caroline Reads Fringe Book Reviews.
Fringe Book Reviews. They're linked in the description.
Yes, and our socials, obviously, Romance Your TBR, also linked in socials. And also, as a side note, our show notes always contain the books that we talk about.
Yes.
So, thanks for tuning in.
Yes.
I mean, consider yourselves romanced.
You better. I mean, I don't want to have to like come and romance you specifically, but I will.
Will romance upon request.
Oh my god.